Okay, I guess this is going to be the first coffee and smoke with Fergus video. It was a suggestion made to me by one of my friends, and I think it was a good idea because there are some things that I think about that I would like to share. And if I ran into you at the coffee shop, this is what would be happening. It would be coffee, a cigarette, and then I would tell you about whatever I was thinking. In this case, knots. So I've been carving the wood, making little carvings and stuff. And as I've been doing this, I realized something. So, in a piece of wood, if you have knots in your wood, if you're carving a piece of wood, you have to carve with the grain. And if you have a knot in the wood, then the grain is going to do this crazy swirl thing around it. And it's really difficult to carve around. You have to be very careful. It's possible, it just takes some time. Now, you could choose a piece of wood that didn't have any knots in it, but the knots are what give it life. The knots are what make it unique and cool, right? Relationships with people are much the same. And I realized as I was carving these things that people also have knots. And a relationship with a person is kind of like carving wood. And if you're in a relationship with a person, so you kind of have to acknowledge their knots, and as you're interacting with them, you have to be careful around the knots. And if the relationship is like carving wood, then each person you're just going to have to take care around the knots. And maybe you could find someone who didn't have any, yeah, right, but if you did, they'd probably be boring as fuck, right? Anyway, so then I started thinking, what are the knots? Like, where do they come from? Now, in a piece of wood, the knot forms to support a branch. That's where the branch comes out, right? So the branch comes out to collect sunlight, more energy. It shows an instinct in the piece of wood, the tree, or whatever the fuck it is, to reach out because it requires more energy. Now, I think it's the same with people. So if we think about our specific knots, basically as branches that have kind of been cut, that we can work basically like visualize an energetic branch or something like that to collect the energy that we weren't getting that caused the fucking knot to begin with. And in a relationship with someone, if you specifically recognize one of these areas, you can also just sort of try to give it energy, just the way that a branch would draw sunlight down. Anyway, so that is what I have learned from buckthorn and knots. And I figured that it was worth sharing. I would love to hear, any fucking other ideas that you have on it or whatever. Yeah. Peace.